Hello and welcome to World Insight with me, Tian Wei, coming to you live from Beijing on CGTN. Coming up on today's program, China's economy grows by 6.9% in the year 2017. That's according to the official statistics. Is it a sign of better things to come? And the long and epic film Forever Young is a hit in the box office, making audiences, especially the young people, reflect on their own choices in life. What's behind it? You're watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. On our program today, the first topic, we want to begin with the newly released China's economy data for the year 2017 by the National Bureau of Statistics. China's economy grew 6.9% year-on-year in 2017, reaching 82 trillion yuan. That's according to the official source, of course, maintaining a momentum of stable and sound development. According to data from the country's top statistician, it's well above the official target, around 6.5%. This is the first pickup, according to official statistics, in growth in 7 years.
Upbeat growth for China's economy in 2017. GDP grew 6.9% compared with the previous year, above the annual target of around 6.5%. Preliminary estimates show that the GDP exceeded 80 trillion yuan. The year-on-year growth was 6.9% for the first 2 quarters and 6.8% for the third and fourth. The head of the National Bureau of Statistics, Ning Jizhe, said the expansion was driven by a slew of factors that include supply-side reforms, rebound trade, and high infrastructure spending. Unlike previous years, growth in trade became one of the major contributors in 2017, yet the external environment for import and export this year may not be as favorable.
Last year, exports realized a double-digit increase. Yet what's more gratifying is the structure of export has been improved, with more value-added products being exported. We will continue efforts to promote China's competitive advantage and create a win-win environment for all countries.
And the quality of the growth is on the fast track as well. The supply-side structural reform was further pushed forward, with transformation and upgrading achieving a new high. The industries of steel and coal have fulfilled the annual task of cutting overcapacity, and innovation-driven development continued to gain momentum. The new driving forces grew rapidly. Consumption has emerged as a major driving force for economic growth. The Chinese economy has been optimizing and undertaking tremendous transactions.
Our economy is shifting from solely relying on heavy industry to a joint driving of the heavy and service industries. On the demand side, the driver has been changing on investment to a combination of investment and consumption. Finally, the old way of depending on exports has been switching to export plus import driven.
Ning also says China will continue to advance the supply-side structural reform in 2018 with more efforts to upgrade economic quality.
For more on the Chinese economy, according to the official data, we are now joined in our Beijing studio Liu Baocheng, who is a professor of ethics with the University of International Business and Economics. Welcome, Professor. In Hong Kong, we have Xiao Geng, a professor of finance and public policy at Hong Kong University. Welcome, Professor, back to our program. Also joining us in Washington, D.C., Jim Ma, Chief China Economist of the Institute of International Finance. Welcome as well. I want to start with the 2 Chinese economists in Hong Kong and in Beijing. Professor Liu.
Yes.
The number seems great. Behind this rosy number, there are concerns whether the numbers are really painting the real picture of China's economy, particularly given the recent incidents in which local economies claimed higher GDP numbers previously, at least.
Well, I think the fact that we are able to expose those falsification shows quite a confidence, and also there have been a number of corrective measures that have been taken place to really to compensate some of the falsified numbers. So through sample study and also through direct reporting from different sectors, instead of only taking into consideration of the local government report.
I see.
And right now we do see that some encouraging or brownie points are going on over there. Supply side reform is really generating fruition, and also the consumer confidence is quite much there. CPI is still within 2%. So export, again, we are back for the double-digit growth. So these are really very encouraging signs.
All these are based on numbers.
That's
when you are reading those numbers. So let's go to Professor Xiao. Not the first time, Professor, you and I have been talking about the statistics. The question related to the statistics also. How do you see the recent incidents? How much do you think the Chinese economy was what was illustrated and is being illustrated and will be illustrated? Professor Xiao.
Well, I think the macro number actually did not change much, and very similar to the expectations. And also now we are not so much, focused on the growth numbers. So what is important is actually the regional differences. I was in southern China. The growth there in terms of quality and quantity are pretty impressive, but I know in other regions are not so good. So I think if you want to know the real situations, we need to look at the regional and sectorial numbers. That will be more informative.
But the natural question, of course, Professor Xiao, is where are those numbers come from?
Well, I think the accuracy of the statistics varies a lot across Chinese regions, and the key is really the fiscal revenues. And if you have such large, you're trying to double counting a lot of GDPs, then you have to deliver tax revenues to the central government. And you have to use that for public purposes.
All
so
right.
that's a constraint which you will eventually limit this double counting.
I see. Professor Liu, agree with that?
Yeah, I pretty much agree, because there has been, the good reason for double counting in a number of cases. For example, the centrally owned enterprises, they are also counted as part of the GDP locally, but they will have to be deducted at the central level, and also that the samples that are really collected by the central statisticians will be able to rectify and also to correct some of the miscounting even by local officials. But the key is that why some of the local officials are really motivated to falsify. So I think we need really to change the job performance evaluation criteria, so that they will not really be there to be motivated to do that, and also that we also need to include more sophisticated measures to check on their performance during the entire process.
Okay, since both of you have talked about the numbers, let's move on to another topic related and sometimes not necessarily related to numbers. Mr. Ma, the fundamental question is, what is the quality of the Chinese economy, and what is the quality of the Chinese economic development? On that bigger issue, without really have to look at the numbers, what would you say?
Thank you. Before answering this question, may I just still move back to add a few more points on the first question just raised?
I can tell all the economists have been dealing with the numbers a lot, and you wouldn't move away from that question. Go ahead, Mr. Ma.
Right. Yeah, thank you. This is an important subject. Yeah, we noticed several local government overstate the GDP. And it's almost a certainty that we will see more local government have overstated GDP. But however, people need to remember this is nothing new. For decades, the aggregation of the local GDP came a couple percentage points higher than the national GDP. Well, how does that affect the 6.8, 6.9 number we saw today? People need to remember the National Statistics Bureau did not simply add up the local GDP to give you the nationwide GDP. Many data points was collected or submitted directly from corporates, from companies, from economic entities to Beijing, totally circumvent the measuring by local government.
Do we know the percentage?
That means we do not know the percentage, but that simply means the overstatement by some local government of the GDP number should not affect the final number reported by the National Statistics Bureau. So in this case, I still have faith in the 6.8, 6.9 number reported.
Okay.
So go back to a second question.
I'm glad. Go ahead. The quality of the economy, sir.
Yeah. Yes, that's an excellent question because we do see the structure of China's GDP change a lot. China's economy change a lot. So for the 2017, obviously, China's GDP depends much less on the old, heavy, capital-intensive style industries such as steel, coal. So that's why the air in Beijing is cleaner. And we also noticed the new emerging technology sectors especially in southern China, in the Pearl River Delta, like Professor Xiaogang just mentioned. They are very vibrant, they are very productive, and they're very competitive.
Right. But you cannot just say one area represents the whole China. You just argue about that yourself, right? So you cannot say one area vibrant and therefore the rest of China's economy has been as vibrant as you just mentioned.
No, but we can see they're kind of pivoting away from the old steel and coal and towards more service and technology sectors. So this is happening.
Mr. Xiao, what about that question, the quality of the economic development? What are some of the barometers actually we could use? Because we cannot just say, I feel. As an economist, you have to use barometers, statistics, you have to use certain categories of things in order to come up with your conclusion. Professor Xiao, what are the barometers we are using about China's economy, particularly its quality?
Well, I think the quality is actually relative to what we call people-centered economic progress.
I see.
So we need to look at how people's living standards are improving, and this is the key. We can't just measure GDP. Because some of the GDP may, you dig a hole and fill the hole again, that are all GDP. So what is relevant is that the people's actual living standards, where they live, what they eat, whether it's safe or not, and how clean the air, and also what I call last miles. A lot of things like traffic in the cities, whether they're improving. All those dimensions are important. And unfortunately, we don't have yet such a good measurement on the quality of growth.
So this is a very interesting question, gentlemen. The three of you have articulated this very beautifully. That is, how do we judge our economy? What is the standard that we should really use? Official standards that we should really use and be sticking to it every year when it comes to the quality of the GDP. There was the so-called debate about the green GDP. It has been debated sometime and then it fades away. There seems to be currently another round of debate about whether GDP is still relevant, what is relevant. We don't know whether this discussion will become sophisticated and eventually leads to some really concrete and satisfying results. And another thing is, how do you see the quality of the GDP vis-a-vis the quality of the economies developed elsewhere? So these things are all related. I'm sure China needs to answer that question. And those questions now, because China's economy become the second largest in the world. So, Professor Liu, what are the things we should use, really? Real barometers.
Yeah, number one is the structure of the growth driver. Whether investment is driving more of the economy or consumption, or whether the government investment or private investment is driving the economy. So that's one barometer. And the other is really the government expenditure. How much is put on the soft side, for example, on education, on environmental protection. And then, how to measure people's living standard in terms of the, the household spending.
Right.
How much is really spent on housing, on children education, and on leisure, on sports, etc. So these are really the sanctioned, measurements to qualify a GDP. So overall, the quality is measured in terms of the, the environment, social development, and the economic gains.
Just to indicate how important this is, according to National Bureau of Statistics, once again, these are official statistics coming from the Chinese government side, central government I'm talking about. China's GDP rose to 82.7 trillion yuan. It means that China's economy grew to about 2/3 of the size of the United States last year. And experts say that at the current rate, China could overtake the U.S. within the next decade. Well, of course, once again, we want to illustrate that this is also according to the official statistics coming from the Chinese central government. So, Mr. Ma, here is the thing. How shall we answer ourselves about what things are we using to articulate exactly what our economy is like and where it is going? Particularly 2018 is the first year of the 19th Party's Congress blueprint being implemented.
Right. Even though there's no one catch-all statistic to measure the quality of growth, but the evidence are pretty abundant at the sector-level data. So, for example, we know in 2017, 2/3 of the growth was driven by consumption, not just investment. Service sector, the share of GDP is much higher now. And also, if you look at the value added of the industrial sector, even the overall growth rate only 6.2, but the growth rate of value added by the high technology sectors, such as computer, IT products, even auto, they are all growing at double digits. And if you look at the export data, just like the spokesperson just mentioned in the video clip you shown, that even the growth rate of the export high technology product are much higher than overall export growth rate. So those data are pretty abundant at a more detailed sector level.
Okay, having said that though, Professor Xiao, we are moving to a new era. And therefore, some of the systems need to be perfected, and also we need to have a new vision. As an economist, given the recent data, given the recent debates about the data, and also a debate about the new vision, what would you suggest? How that is going to be related to the governance structures and the way to judge the quality of governance?
Well, I think, again, the issue is really about a change from, in the previously, we have so-called land-focused growth, region-focused growth, but now we really need to focus on people, how to improve the living standards of the people. And because the population in China are actually shifting a lot, so we need to rethink about where are the people now and what they want and what they are doing, especially how to improve their productivity. Because, our productivity is still only 1/5 of that of the United States. So we have a huge gap in improving those productivities, and particularly the people's productivity. So I think that is really a challenge, because we build so much houses all over China, but the people just like a few places. That's a problem.
Right.
We really need to think about how efficiently to grow in the future.
Professor Liu, before we go, very briefly from you, on the one hand, confidence is very important. On the other hand, one has to have a very articulative understanding of the reality. So how to balance, and when it comes to economic outlook, where should China stand, Professor Liu?
Well, I think we are still very much resolved to the qualitative growth in terms of the not only the GDP, but also disposable income among people, and also the people's education, how to raise productivity, and also to enlarge the share of the green economy in the whole entire pizza pie. So, these are the directions that we cannot really deviate.
All right. We want to thank the three of you, three economists, for sharing with us your insights and your understanding of the realities and your hopes for the future. Really appreciate it. Jin Ma, Xiao Geng, and Liu Baozheng. Thank you, gentlemen, for being with us. All the best. Stay with us here on World Insight with me. Still to come on our program, the film Forever Young explores decisions that youth make in the course of Chinese history. What makes it such an epic tale in a time of war, a period of social upheaval, then up to the modern times and the contemporary times? A discussion right after this break. Welcome back. You're watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei, coming to you Monday to Friday on CGTN. Let's talk about movies. An epic Chinese movie, Forever Young, has become another hit on the heels of the big screen success of the movie Youth. Since the beginning of the year, Forever Young talks about 4 generations of Tsinghua University students making their personal choices in accordance with their times, namely before and during the war against the Japanese aggression, during the Cultural Revolution in contemporary China, and the present. The movie was made for Tsinghua University's 100th anniversary, but for some reason was postponed for 5 years till now to hit the big screen. Some of the characters chose to serve the country till death, while others held on to their beliefs and values, even when the whole world went the other direction. The choices they made reduced many of the audience to tears, and the film became a hot topic. There we go. For more on the movie Forever Young, we are joined in our Beijing studio by 2 Forever Young persons. One is Ms. Han Hua, a media and communication consultant. Welcome to our program. Welcome back, I should say. And also Professor Teng Jimeng, Associate Professor at the American Studies Center of the Beijing Foreign Studies University. Welcome. Why? I mean, earlier there's a movie called Youth, Fang Hua, whose original novel was actually named You Touched Me. But when they became a movie, it's called Youth. And now there's another Chinese movie, which is not necessarily in Chinese means youth. Now it's called Forever Young. So it seems that we are all fascinated about youth these days. People would wonder, why are we becoming so reminiscent? And also, so much want to catch up with whatever is related to news, or rather, youth. Professor Tang.
Well, that reminds me of a conversation of President Xi with Donald Trump. President Trump, when they were in the Forbidden City, President Xi told him that we are a nation with 5,000-year history. And so to me, I think it means we are an Asian country that tried to look young cinematically. And so in this sense, movies that features young people with great vitality and great patriotism and all these great feelings are appealing.
It's a great way that you articulate it. But, the fact is, you didn't see that a few years ago. You could argue that the same thing a few years ago, but why is it relevant now? I think that is the question. Professor, you cannot escape. I'm going to come back to you. What about you, Ms. Han?
Maybe we are entering into a new era, but as I put it in one of my previous articles, new era does not come or start overnight. Remember, the Forever Young film is actually made 5 years ago or even 6 years ago. So when the time it was given to enter the new era, I think that's the reason people want to pursue, not only to pursue the new era or the new beginning of their lives and works, but also try to remember during this process, remember the old belief or our traditional value or virtue, which is to do more self-reflection.
You see Chinese movies these days, Professor Tang, blockbusters, okay, action movies, things that imitate Hollywood that get huge box office. That was just a few months ago.
Right.
However, these days you see these new waves of movies actually full of idealism, or the shake-up of idealism.
Yes.
And yet, you do not see those anymore. I mean, action movies and things like that. So you see the Chinese moviegoers are having some constant changes in the things that they desire. So, Professor Teng, how do you see that phenomenon?
I think it's about this changing taste of audiences in this very country.
It's quite fast, I would
say.
Very
fast.
Just a few months' time, right?
Because we're young and young people change. And change their minds, their faces, but they keep changing. And so taste also change with this very new era. I agree with Han. And it's all about being new and being young to appeal to this very market. And at the same time, I think these Hollywood-style big blockbuster, high-tech sci-fi and digital narrative movies are a thing of the past because we are fed up with it. Like people who are fed up with martial arts films years before, right? And so now people are actually trying to enjoy films about this very nostalgia, idealism in the past, in the 1930s and 40s, and perhaps a little bit of history since 1949, since the founding of PRC. This is so new to this millennium generation. The people born in the 1990s or perhaps born in the 2000s. This is the generation that are opening their mind's eyes to new trends and are accepting and receptive to this very new trends.
The reason we are doing this movie, I'll let you to catch up about that too.
Sure.
But the reason we are doing this movie is not because it is like an epic movie. It is not. Because we should say, maybe it's just above average. But the theme of the movie has become so popular. That's why people go to the movie theaters and watch it, even though they feel sometimes their tears were being forced to get out. But they still want it. That is the phenomenon that we are seeing, because people know this is not the best movie that we have ever seen. We've seen better movies. But the reason why people still want to see it and still have their tears down, that is the thing new, Ms. Han.
Very good. We may not be able. we may not be able to see the best movies at all times, but it is okay, or it is still welcome or popular to see some good movies like this one. And I want to add or echo what Professor Teng Jimeng just said. The change of Chinese movie in the recent years, it's in an accelerating speed. It is actually reflecting the speed of our economic growth in the past 30 to 40 years. We are now entering into an accelerating pace of the whole country's development, the societal development, the economic development. So it's no surprise to see the changing become so fast. And also it shows the positive trend. It shows that the industry, the movie industry in China is growing from zero, from nobody, to someone that we are able to compete with the Hollywood industry to some extent.
Finally, they realized what is the pulse of their own domestic audience, it seems. But having said that, though, it is about the past. In a way, most of the movies, this movie, and the way people look at the past, of course, is different. But the interesting thing of looking at the past and also looking at different generations with the current interpretation is also an interesting phenomenon. Professor Teng, I throw this very challenging question to you.
Well, once again, if you look at this film narrative, you can see it's a film about 4 stories, right? 4 stories about 4 young people in different ages. It's about up against the corporate corruption in China. The first story, Zhang Zhen's story. The second one is about the trials and tribulations of the Cultural Revolution. Once again, political victimization and persecution. This is history. This is education. So it is entertainment. It's history.
And
it's
what about
edification.
The other two stories?
And the other two is all about idealism, right? Something that inspired us against this very world of materialism. And also the pursuit of personal happiness, the bourgeoisie sort of happiness. And so in this sense, I think
another story is about flying tigers.
And also wartime heroism, patriotism, I mean, as a source of inspiration for the nation and a person's duty to the nation, which once again also arouses that very patriotic feelings, especially when the mother actually lecturing on the son with his very traditional values. I cried a lot. I cried during that very scene because
but
it's so
actually,
moving.
when you put all these four stories together, you could see a common theme that they are trying to describe the role of young intellectuals in the Chinese society, no matter what time we're talking about. It seems like it's not just the so-called patriotism, but rather the role of an individual and the choices individuals make about their own life, and its minor and yet enormous impact it could have for the people around them. Professor Tang.
Yeah, the last one, for example, the credit, this 8-minute long credit, actually provide a long list of these great individuals, these icons of people in science, in literature, in sociology, that contributes to the growth of our nation. In fact, they actually laid the founding stone.
And they are only coming from one university, Tsinghua University. And think about the huge amount that are coming from other universities and probably not even belong to any universities.
Right.
So this is a whole group of people that actually have not been touched on whose story in the past when it comes to intellectuals.
No. I mean, that's why I applauded the efforts of this great director who actually sings songs of songs of praise for these unsung heroes. I mean, back in the past, like our republic was basically the product of war. Our heroes are military soldiers, politicians, not intellectuals.
Ms. Han?
Actually, you remember the last words at the ending of the film. It says, "May you remember how precious you are." I think if you replace the noble instead of precious, please remember how noble you are. That can also represent how these youth intellectuals can be representative, not only for their own life, but also for the life and development of the nation, of the society. I think that's the true story. So we are not only looking back to the past, it's the true value, the true virtue that can hold until today. It shows the story, the four stories respectively shows the pursuance of the true heart of what you want to learn, the literature, liberal arts, or the science, and the pursuance, the truth to your generation and to your society, and the truth to your love and to the work, and also the truth to your freedom. So it is very consistent to show the young intellectuals represented by Tsinghua University. It is regarded as the highest, maybe the highest education level or platform of our country. So it is the nobleness or the self-reflection and to be your true self that holds until today.
There are a lot of legends in China's modern and contemporary history when it comes to intellectuals, but not many of their stories actually have been illustrated by a popular movie. I guess that's probably the charm of it. Nevertheless, they talk about not just one individual, but rather a whole group, a whole generation, and different generations of Chinese intellectuals. Having said that, though, the reason people become reminiscent are two. One is we're already lack of it. Second is probably it could be using as an inspiration for the future. So where are we now among these two, Ms. Han?
Maybe the second,
probably
the
a
latter
more
one.
difficult question.
It's challenging, but it's very inspiring. It's just like I said, it's maybe the latter one can be used as an inspiration, like the self-reflection, the pursuance of your true self, and the use of your true self, your capabilities, your time, and even your resources to contribute not only to a better self of your own, but also a better society, a better nation, to whatever you can to do that.
Professor Tang?
I agree. I totally agree. I think this is all about, see, Forever Young is all about putting and elevating a new theme and perhaps an old theme up to a new height at the level which is supposed to be very, very, I would say, not just aesthetically beautiful, but also in terms of providing a cathartic experience. And in this sense, I think the film is very artistic. It is the artisan actually being now shown with this great craftsmanship in terms of providing visual spectacles, right, the visual spectacles, and also how the portrayal of these great individuals in time of war, in time of political victimization, and so, and they stand tall and show the dignity and also the great, firmness on their heart, in their heart. So the last message, I think, it could be also a universal message, is follow your heart, right? Pursue what you consider to be correct for yourself, for the nation, for the general community.
In artistic works, there is a concern about overhype.
Yeah.
Overhype could also kill the original thought of why an artistic work is being produced. Of course, this is a popular movie. It's not necessarily one of those, the most artistic product you've ever seen. But how do you see that? I mean, on the one hand, this is a movie that is getting really popular. People go there to watch it, and they feel being touched. But on the other hand, people will be very much know the phenomenon of emotion fatigue. If cultural phenomena like this to be replicated, reproduced. So how do you see that balance? We are genuine in creating this beautiful work. But on the other hand, there has to be a caution about overhype as well. I guess for artists and for the audience, both is a test, isn't it, Ms. Han?
You are definitely not the audience the producer wants to pursue.
But I did go to see that movie. I did go with my
challenging perspective.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
I suspect, it's not without any, with due respect, I don't think the Chinese audience, or the audience in general, are that sophisticated when they are in the cinema. That is why the cinema or movie are called entertainment business.
It is a business we're talking about. Ms. Han's argument is, don't be concerning too much, right? You don't have to worry too much.
And
just let it go.
The theme will just flow into your hearts naturally.
There you go. Okay, Professor Tom.
Well, see, that's where my criticism is. I mean, this film is almost like a tear-jerker, right? Sometimes it forces you to cry. I mean, and because of poor craftsmanship. And one thing I'm critical of is its cross-cuts. I mean, many different times in the film, from one scene into another, and it doesn't hold you long enough to have your career, and then it cross-cut to another scene.
But many tears.
But once again, I think the film is great in the sense that it made a complex drama simple. And filmmaking is all about the art of making complex things into something simple and treat it as an infotainment, provide information and also entertainment.
But you know what? At least they are beginning to do it. So it is a great try in a very interesting and certainly encouraging direction. For now, I want to get the two very sophisticated commentators to say a final words about the movie, particularly, generally speaking, where are we going, do you think? Ms. Han?
In terms of the movie industry in China, it's getting more and more sophisticated, but we want to see a more mature system to be built around the movies to make it a real industry.
There we go. Professor Tang.
Well, appeal to young people, but then try to make improve your professionalism, improve your craftsmanship, tell a good story.
All right. Do it professionally.
Do it professionally.
Professor Tang Jimeng and Ms. Han Hua, thank you so much for two of you for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, try to find us, World Insight CGTN, into your search engine, or check out our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Sina Weibo. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone on the World Insight team, thanks for watching. And tune in again next time for insights across China and around the world. Good night.